It's day 15 in the criminal case against Sean Diddy Combs. Let's take a look at what happened inside the courtroom. A Los Angeles police officer and fire arson investigator both took the stand to speak about a 2012 firebombing incident with Kid Cudi's car. Cassie Ventura's former stylist also testified. Investigators said a Molotov cocktail found in Kid Cudi's car appeared to have been used to ignite the car. However, it malfunctioned and didn't explode. However, had it done what it was supposed to, investigators said there would have been extensive damage. An investigator called the fire set inside Kid Cudi's car, quote, a targeted crime. Arson is among the acts listed in the racketeering conspiracy charges against Diddy. Another officer said he and his partner noticed a black Cadillac drive by 2 times as they were investigating the potential arson. They said they ran the plates on the second trip and found that it was registered to Bad Boy Records, which is, of course, Diddy's music label. They also said both Ventura and his former assistant, Capricorn Clark, refused to talk to them about the incident. Diddy's defense team also filed a motion for mistrial today after a fire arson investigator admitted that evidence was destroyed without authorization after the arson investigation. His attorney said that statement made it seem as if Diddy had something to do with that. That motion was denied by a judge. To break this all down, let's bring in former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. Now, Nima, some of the points that the investigators hit today seem to go towards the predicate crimes, which you need for racketeering. They talked about robbery, they talked about arson. Can you first just kind of briefly explain what predicate crimes are and if you think that they've been established or are on the way there?
Of course, Sophia. So when you're dealing with RICO or racketeering, you need a few things. You need a criminal enterprise. And typically people think of the mob or street gangs or the drug cartels, but it can be something much looser. It can be Bad Boy Records with Sean Diddy Combs at the head of the organization, right? Really, it's any loose association of two or more people. You have to have an agreement to do something unlawful. That's the conspiracy part of it, whether it's a RICO conspiracy or another type of conspiracy. You do need that. And of course, you can have unindicted co-conspirators. So Combs can be agreeing with people who aren't charged, which is what we're seeing here, to do something unlawful. And then you also need that pattern of racketeering activity. So that means you need 2 or more RICO predicate acts over a 10-year period. Now, of course, sex trafficking is a RICO predicate act, but what makes the statute so powerful is that you can get to RICO even if you don't prove sex trafficking if you're the government. So let's take a step back. Let's say the jurors believe that Cassie's freak-offs were actually consensual, that there was no force, fraud, or coercion. You can actually get to RICO through arson. You can get there through kidnapping. You can get there through extortion or witness intimidation, prostitution, bribery. So the fact that we're hearing evidence of all these other crimes does allow the government to possibly get to racketeering, even if they can't prove sex trafficking.
Okay, so it looks like there's different paths to the same goal. That's kind of what they're trying to do.
Exactly. And that's why the arson in this case, we're spending so much time on Kid Cudi's car. And you had investigator Jimenez today talking about the arson and the Molotov cocktail. That's why
Right.
all that is so incredibly important because, of course, sex trafficking is probably the most serious crime because it can carry a mandatory minimum sentence of up to 15 years to potentially life. But racketeering, you can also get a potential life sentence as well, even though you don't have those mandatory minimums, you don't have those floors. The ceiling is still there, and the judge can consider a lot of evidence when you're looking at racketeering.
So defense, it looked like they're trying their best to poke holes in this investigation. Is that a pretty standard strategy? Do you see this happening over and over again, I guess, as this trial is going to go on?
It is. So what the defense is saying is, look, domestic violence, arson, assault, battery, none of this has been charged, right? And anywhere, not just in this case. In any case, Combs wasn't arrested in Los Angeles by LAPD after the assault, after the break-in into Kid Cudi's home, even after the 2016 hotel incident. There's really been no arrests being made, and they have admitted some physical violence. I think they have to, because that video doesn't lie. I think they would lose credibility with the jurors. But they're trying to walk this line where they're admitting some of the conduct that hasn't been charged, but they don't want to admit enough for it to be a RICO predicate act. And they're certainly not going to admit anything sex related that may arguably be sex trafficking because of the force or the coercion.
Right. I just very curious to get your thoughts. What did you think about defense's motion for mistrial? Do you think that was a long shot? What
It,
are your
it
thoughts?
really was. So this was what the motion was based on. So there was the break-in, and after the break-in, Kid Cudi asked officers or agreed to have his home fingerprinted. And apparently they pulled a couple fingerprints off a glass door that were on a fingerprint card. So when Jimenez testified, he said, you know what, I tried to compare those prints to the evidence in the arson case, but at some point that fingerprint card had been destroyed. So when that testimony came out, the defense moved for a mistrial because they said the prosecution was improperly implying that somehow Combs was responsible for having that evidence destroyed because, he was rich and famous and well connected and could place a call and have evidence disappear. Obviously, that's not what the prosecution was going for. They wanted to get out the reason why the prints were never connected. The arson was never connected to the break-in. So what the judge ultimately ruled was, I'm going to have the jury disregard that, and we're going to strike that from the record, but it's not really a basis for a mistrial. So that was certainly a long shot, but obviously it made for some drama today in the courtroom.
Absolutely. Nima Rahmani, thank you so much for your thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Of course, Sophia, talk soon.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.